Today's Jews are not really Jews at all. But wait, today's Jews are responsible for all the evil in the world. Well, Israel is not really Israel, but Israel is evil because it's Jewish. Well, which is it? Which lie is true? The anti-Jewish lies actually cancel each other out. This is Michael Brown. Welcome to a special edition of Thoroughly Jewish Thursday on the Line of Fire broadcast, where it is our goal today to debunk some of the most common anti-Jewish lies. Now, I want to be candid. There's a certain natural discouragement you can have when you see lies that have been answered, dealt with, comprehensively refuted years ago, decades ago, in some cases centuries ago, and they keep coming back, and they keep coming back. And when you know in some cases it's ultimately a spiritual battle, and information is not going to change someone's mind. Truth is not going to change someone's mind. So ultimately we pray for hearts and minds to be open. But my hope is for those who love the Lord and who love the Word, that we will have the grace to step back and to ask the question, okay, is what I believe accurate? Is it truthful? Is it fact-filled? If it's a theological issue, just because I hold to it or my congregation holds to it, that doesn't in itself make it true. Because you've got so many different views within the body, what makes my view on everything or your view on everything right? So we step back, we pray, Lord, show us our blind spots, help us to love the truth, even if it means changing in our position. Help us to love the truth. And then from there, we do our best to come to godly conclusions. Sound like a plan? Hey, all of my friends in the greater DFW area, November 7th, that's a Friday night, November 8th, Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, I will be debating Bible teacher Steve Gregg. He proposed the debate. He's wanted to do it for some time. I'm thrilled to do it. He has been an incredible gentleman, as gracious as can be, leading up to it. We're going to be debating, is Israel today fulfillment of biblical prophecy? What was Paul teaching in Romans 9 through 11? Are there Old Testament prophecies that remain to be fulfilled, or have they all been fulfilled historically and or in Jesus? So we're going to spend a good number of hours together. It will be live streamed as well. You'll be able to watch live stream on the Line of Fire YouTube channel, and it'll be posted there thereafter. November 7th, Friday night, November 8th, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. In fact, hang on. If you are, let me get the info here. If you are going to be in the area and you want to attend, we'd love for you to register. It's free. But text Israel. So if you're in the DFW area and you want to attend Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, any of the sessions, all right, text the word Israel to 59090. So 59090. Text the word Israel, and that'll get you registered just so they can have a count of those that will be coming. Otherwise, we invite everyone to watch online, live stream, or in the days subsequently when it is posted. All right. Which lies should we tackle first? I asked folks to post on Instagram and on Facebook. So I'll start with one on Instagram. That somehow modern Israel as a nation is, quote, chosen by God, and that no amount of greed, hypocrisy, or blasphemy against his son will make them lose God's favor. Oh, actually, there's error in this post because the Jewish people remain chosen. It was a choosing based on grace. Deuteronomy 7, God said to Israel before they took the promised land, you're not better than anyone. You're not bigger than anyone. God didn't choose you because you were special, but because he loved the patriarchs. So it's his grace. And calling meant greater accountability, greater responsibility, as we read it in Amos, the 3rd chapter, where he says, you only have I known, meaning you only have I chosen out of all the families on the earth. Therefore, I'll punish you for your iniquities. And Paul is explicit in Romans 3 that Israel's unbelief, if Israel's unfaithful, it doesn't mean God's unfaithful. It doesn't disqualify his promises. In Romans 11, Paul is explicit that the very ones who are presently opposing the gospel are still chosen and elect because of God's love for the patriarchs. So God chose Israel for a mission, to make the Messiah known, to welcome him into this world, to make him known, and ultimately to welcome him back. The Jewish people still have that mission. A Jewish person who rejects Jesus as Messiah is as lost as a Gentile. In fact, Paul says in Romans 2 that not only will judgment begin to the Jew first and then to the Gentile, but blessing will be to the Jew first and also to the Gentiles. So there's great responsibility with the chosenness, with the calling. But here's what this questioner missed. Being chosen does not mean you're automatically in God's favor. For example, there are many things in Israel today that are wrong. In many ways, Israel is superior to other countries in its morality, in its beliefs and conduct. In other ways, Israel is just like everybody else. And just being chosen doesn't guarantee favor. You can be under judgment and chosen at the same time. When Israel was scattered around the world, they were still chosen, but under judgment, but not under favor at that point. So what I find interesting is some folks posted what they thought were truisms, but they're actually posting lies. Some of the lies we want to deal with. How about this lie? Jews today are not really Semitic people at all. Rather, they're descendants from Ashkenaz, who was the son of Japheth in the Bible, one of the sons of Noah. So rather than being from the descendants of Shem, from whence we get the term Semite, rather than being descendants of Shem, rather today's Jews, or Ashkenazim, which means they're descendants from Ashkenaz, and in the Table of Nations in Genesis 10, he's a descendant of Japheth. Okay, here's the truth. Ashkenazi Jews simply mean Jews from Germany, and they are a part of the world Jewish population. They're not Sephardic Jews. They're not Mizrahi Jews, so Middle Eastern Jews and Jews from the Iberian Peninsula and Spain, etc. They're Jews who lived in the Rhineland in Germany and the surrounding countries. That's all it means. Ashkenaz is not related to Ashkenaz in Genesis 10, any more than if you visit, say, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, that it's related to Bethlehem in the land of Israel. Ashkenaz is simply the name that medieval Jews gave to Germany. That's all. It's just like they gave the name Sfarad, which is another ancient biblical name, to Spain. That's all it is. So they were Jews who lived in Germany. And you have other Jews that lived in the Iberian Peninsula and Spain around there, the Sephardic Jews. And then Jews that lived the entire time in the Middle East, the Mizrahi Jews. So you have... And what's interesting is the common DNA that is shared between these Jews from different parts of the world. But Ashkenaz in the Bible is probably the Scythian people who ceased to exist for a couple thousand years. It's just, again, the Middle Ages, as Jews were traveling to different parts of the world, they gave names to different places. And because Ashkenaz was north and Ashkenaz in the Bible was north, so they called Germany, that part of Germany, Ashkenaz. This is all it is, Jews from Germany. And where'd they come from originally? From Israel, from the Middle East. And these things can be traced back. That somehow modern Israel, did that one. Here's another lie. Modern Israel has planned and funded every attack and assassination on and in the U.S. It's amazing that Jewish people get blamed for virtually everything. The same Jewish people that couldn't control their destiny and were scattered around the world for 2,000 years. The same Jewish people who were exiled from country after country because they wouldn't be baptized or they wouldn't convert to Islam. The same Jews that couldn't stop the Holocaust, 2 out of every 3 European Jews slaughtered. The same Jews who've had thousands of lives lost in terror attacks since the state of Israel was reborn in 1948. These same Jews, persecuted and hated around the world, somehow control the whole world. And related to that is the idea that Jews control all the banks worldwide and that Jews control all the money worldwide. the thing that underscores the ridiculousness of this, have you ever seen Fiddler on the Roof? Do you ever see Fiddler on the Roof? And the poverty in which that family lives, that was very common around the Jewish world, around the world for many, many centuries, where Jews were deprived of good jobs. And something Martin Luther advocated in 1543, that they'd be deprived of good jobs and put in not concentration camps, herded together into camps like gypsies, as he said, and deprived of passport privileges and things like that. This was common throughout Jewish history. And Jews got into banking because it's one of the few things that they were allowed to do, money lending. So how do you feel about the people you owe money to? You hate them. What if you could find a way to not have to pay them by killing them? This actually happened during the Crusades. The Crusaders just turned on Jewish people they lived with, communities for centuries in some cases. Turned them, butchered them. Now these Christ killers, let's kill them. Hey, at the same time, let's eliminate our debt. So Jews got into banking because it was one of the few jobs that they could keep in different parts of the world. But even so, Jews suffered terrible poverty through much of their history, scattered around the world, in exile. What do you think happens when you're kicked out of a country like 1492? All non-baptized Jews are kicked out of Spain. You leave without your jobs. You leave in certain cases without many of your possessions. You leave your homes behind. Now you have to get established somewhere else as a foreigner. Of course, there's been a lot of Jewish poverty and suffering. Yet somehow Jews control all the money. All you need is a few prominent Jews in banking in America. That's enough for people to say, you see, Jews control all the money. And you step back and think that the illogicality of it. You know, there's a lot of poverty in Israel. I don't know if you're aware of that. A lot of Israelis live under the poverty line, which is so strange when Jews control all the money. Let's see here. This is a truism, but it claims to be a lie. The promises given to Abraham also confer to the genetic descendants of Abraham based on their DNA. They confer to the physical descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God said it. Well, then it's Jewish superiority. It's got nothing to do with anyone's superiority. It has to do with the fact that God keeps his word. Let me ask you a question. Has God kept his promises to the church despite our sin? Has God kept his promises to his body despite all the ugly things that have happened in church history? Did he say, I'm done with the church forever, I'm casting it off? No, because he saved us by grace. He called Israel by grace. It's the Sinai covenant, which comes after, is a covenant of blessings for obedience and curses for disobedience. And that's one reason Israel suffered so much through history, the curses of disobedience. But the promises given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob remain. Show me one place in the Bible where God rescinded his covenant promise. We're talking about before the Sinai covenant, where God rescinded his covenant promise to Israel. Find me just one place in the Bible where God rescinded his covenant promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. To the contrary, Paul reiterates it in Romans 11, 28 and 29. He reiterates it in Romans, the 15th chapter, the 7th verse, saying that he confirms the promises to the patriarchs. Hebrews 6 says God swore by an oath when he promised to Abraham. Galatians 3:17 says the law, which comes after the promise, cannot annul the promise. So this is allegedly a lie. It's absolutely true. Why do you think the Jewish people are still here? Why do you think we've been regathered back to our land? Because we're so great, we're so powerful, or because of the promises of God and the character of God and the integrity of God? This one, I support Israel, just not the government of Israel. Well, can I ask you a question? If you say, I love America, did you love America when President Biden was president? Do you love America now when President Trump is president? Did you love America when President Obama was president? Why is it that with Israel, we have to distinguish supporting Israel versus supporting, quote, the present government? Do you support America? Yeah, do you support America no matter who the president is? Yeah, but you don't agree with everything that the president does or the government does or the country does. I love America, but many things about the country grieve me to the core. Many things about our government over the decades grieves me to the core. But I love America. I support America. I stand with America. And yet I could constantly talk about what's wrong with America, where we need to repent, where the church needs to repent, where there are problems in the government, and so on. Why do we always have to make this distinction? Well, I stand with Israel, but not the government. Why do we have to say that all the time? Again, it's something it's the new thing that you hear a lot of, but what does it even mean? When I stand with Israel, what does it mean? It means that I believe that God brought the Jewish people back to the land and that he's preserved the Jewish people for his purpose and that Satan wants to wipe them out. So I stand with Israel against the devil. That's what it means. Pretty simple, I would say. Do I agree with everything that Israel does? Of course not. Of course not. How could I agree with everything Israel does? Just religiously. How can I agree with everything Israel does? The majority of the nation is fairly secular, not religious. Many atheists. And then the very, very religious, maybe a third of the nation is religious, maybe getting increasingly so. And out of that, maybe 10, 15% ultra-religious. So the more religious they are, the more they oppose people like me or differ with people like me, and differ with faith in Jesus Yeshua. And then there's abortion laws in Israel and porn in Israel and crime in Israel and other. Of course, I don't agree with everything Israel does, but I could go on with a long list of problems in America. I don't qualify. Well, I love America, but not the present government. I stand with my nation, but not the present government. Why do we have to do that with Israel? It's taken for granted. You may think Prime Minister Netanyahu is amazing. You may think he's terrible. You may think it's a mix, good and bad. Either way, standing with Israel means just what I've said it means. And as a friend of Israel, when Israel does wrong, you can rebuke Israel. That's what friends do. You can say, this is wrong. You can say, I support you and I stand with you, but this is wrong. Why do we have to put this qualifier in all the time? Yeah, and the Khazar theory is really popular, that today's Jews aren't actually Jews, but are converts of the Khazars. By the way, I've taught on virtually all these things at different times. If you've never read my book, Our Hands Are Stained with Blood, it came out in 92, never went out of print. We updated it in 2019. By all means, get yourself a copy of it. Our Hands Are Stained with Blood. I can virtually guarantee you it will powerfully impact your life if you read it. It might just change your life. It'll be tremendously eye-opening. And then a follow-up book came out in 2020, Christian Anti-Semitism. If you don't have these books, I urge you to get them and read them. You can't afford to not know what's in them, from church history to contemporary anti-Semitism. So we deal with a lot of these lies in these books. But here's the Khazar theory, that today's Jews are not really Jews. Rather, they are descendants of the kingdom of Khazar, which would be in Turkey area, in Central Asia, Turkey, etc. That today's Jews are not really Jews. They're descendants of the Khazars, which was a pagan kingdom that converted en masse to Judaism in around the 9th century. And that's all of today's Jews. That's where they come from. Well, the first problem with that is, as I said earlier, you have Jews that have lived in the Middle East continually for thousands of years. In other words, going back to Old Testament times, they've lived there. Some were exiled into Babylon, which is today's Iraq, or into Persia, today's Iran, or to other surrounding nations that are Muslim nations today. And they've lived in them all this time. They've been there the whole time. Others have been in the land of Israel the whole time. Continuous presence for many, many generations. So, or for much of the time. So what about them? They've been there. And they're a substantial portion of the nation. I saw a video recently with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas saying that he saw an article in Haaretz, which is a left-wing Israeli newspaper, and then he was expanding on it and saying that he believed that 70 or 80% of the Jews living in Israel today had originally been expelled from surrounding Muslim lands. He put it differently, the way they were there, but they expelled in 1948 with Israel's Declaration of Independence. About 800 plus thousand Jews were expelled from these surrounding nations, and many of them made their way back to Israel as the original homeland. So that's got nothing to do with the Khazars many centuries later in another part of the world. So that's the first problem. Second problem is there is no historical evidence for this. There are Jewish accounts that do speak of Khazar king and others converting to Judaism. And it could well be that this happened historically, that a number of people did convert. The Khazar Empire itself disappeared, was no more. The Khazarian kingdom, no more. And whatever number of people converted, a small number, and they became incorporated into the larger populace. Contrary to some claims that go in this other direction, the Yiddish language, which is Germanic, and then with Hebrew and other things mixed into it, that is unconnected to Turkic languages that would have been Khazarian. Unconnected. That there is not a DNA trace that goes back to the Khazar kingdom. In fact, what you find is Jews from Germany, Rhineland area, Ashkenazi Jews, so they migrated there. Jews from the Iberian Peninsula, Sephardic Jews, migrated there. That they have more in common with each other than the surrounding nations where they've lived. So Khazar theory, today's Jews are not Jews at all. Throw it out. Throw it out. Throw it out. Let's just see here. Because Israel has funded and even given to the states, U.S. closed their eyes when Israel attacked Gaza, and that was what I heard from a fellow believer. Shocking. Yeah, it is shocking to see how Israel gets blamed for everything. It is shocking to see how much power Israel allegedly has, that Jews control the government of America, that Trump, look, his own daughter converted to Judaism and married an Orthodox Jew, a non-Orthodox Jew, Jared Kushner, and Jews control the White House and so on and so forth. Yeah, Trump has been a great friend of Israel, but Trump's also pushed back on Netanyahu and basically said, you're going to do it like this. And Trump is doing his best to have fine relations with the Muslim world. And the challenge is how do I prove to you that there are not invisible ghosts in the air here? How do I prove that to you? How do I prove to you that there are not invisible ghosts swirling around your room right now? How can I prove that to you? That's how it is with a lot of the lies about Israel. Do you know that Israel is secretly kidnapping and killing Palestinians to take their organs, to lead the black market organ trade? How do you refute things that are complete and total myths? How do you refute them? That is, no, but don't you know this one body was found and something was missing? And then when you study this and check this and check this and check this and go a little deeper, and one useful thing that AI can sometimes do if you push it hard enough is it'll get past the thing, okay, no, I just reported there's really actually no factual evidence for this. How about this lie? That the Palestinians have always been peace-loving, happy to live with Israel in a two-state setting, but Israelis are warmongers, and that's why there hasn't been peace. To the contrary, when the Peel Commission presented a two-state solution in 1937 to the Jewish people living in what was called Palestine then, and the Arabs, and it was very favorable to the Arabs and a very small portion for the Jews. While the Jewish community was debating it, the Arab community said categorically no. In 1947, when the UN said, okay, look, we just got to work this out, British mandate, they haven't been able to figure things out. Here's what we're going to do. Here's a two-state solution, more favorable now to the Jewish people. They'd get a little over half of the land, but still so many things they wanted they wouldn't have, and very difficult to defend borders. The Jewish leadership accepted it. The Arab Muslim leadership said categorically no. There are even quotes, verified quotes, where they said the great shame would be if we just concede. If we fight a war and lose, that's one thing, but to concede, impossible. And you have to remember, for many Muslims, the idea of a Jewish state in what was Islamic territory is unthinkable. It's absolutely unthinkable. So it's been refused steadily. Other concessions over the decades that were made, refused. So there could have been two states side by side for now almost 100 years if you go back to 1937. And for 70 plus years if you go back to 1947, 1948. So when the Jewish communities accepted things or concessions after the Six-Day War, no. And think of this. The surrounding Arab Muslim nations, do they really care about the Palestinians? Do they really care about the Palestinians? Why is it when Jordan controlled Judea Samaria, what we call the West Bank, that they did not rehabilitate, strengthen, develop the land for the Palestinians there? When Egypt controlled Gaza, and this was for many years, Egypt did not enhance the situation of the Palestinians. In fact, go to the lineoffire.org. In fact, let's just make sure it's up. Let's just check over the line of fire. And let me just see here there we go. If we posted the article yet, give me 1 second, read. No, it'll be up by tomorrow. Do Palestinian lives matter? Do Palestinian lives matter? You'd be amazed to see how the Palestinians have been a convenient tool with which to bash Israel and make Israel look bad from the start. Why, pray tell, are there Palestinian refugee camps to this day in countries like Lebanon and Syria? Why aren't they full citizens? Because they've been denied citizenship and they still live in camps. Even in Gaza, you have refugee camps. Even in Judea Samaria, you have refugee camps. There's second-class status. Why? And this doesn't mean everything Israel does is perfect or right. Feel free to criticize Israel. Just do your best to be fair and accurate, not just going by propaganda. But please, let us be realistic here. And even ask, do we care about the death of Palestinians if it's Palestinian killing Palestinians, or only if it's the IDF killing Palestinians? I saw a very powerful presentation. I wish I'd pulled it up to have it ready today, but it was a reel on Instagram where a man from Yemen is saying to the UN, you don't care about us at all. You talk about Palestinians all the time. You don't care about the Arab world. You don't care about the famine and the civil war in Yemen and the horrific suffering in Syria. You don't care about that. Why? Because Israel's not behind it. If Israel's involved with it, then you care. It's not really caring at all. It's just bashing Israel. All right. I've answered a few things from Facebook, Instagram. I'm going to go over to Facebook. And before I do, here is a word from our co-sponsor, Trivita. If you've never checked out these great health supplements from our friends at Trivita, it's a real goal to get people healthier. Healthy diet is the start. You cannot bypass healthy diet. These are supplements, not substitutes. But you'll find them really, really excellent, well-made, and 100% of your first order is donated to the Line of Fire, and over 1/10 of all subsequent orders. So check them out. At the same time you're making a donation to us, check out this word from our co-sponsor, Trivita. We'll be right back.
Staying active is essential for your well-being. Whether you're at the gym, strolling in the park, or enjoying hobbies, every step counts because movement is life. I'm Paul, a board-certified doctor of holistic health, and I want to introduce you to Trivita's beetroot gummies. Packed with nitrates, these gummies enhance vasodilation, giving you the boost you need to stay active. The natural power of beetroot supports energy, stamina, and healthy blood pressure. So whether you're gardening, dancing, or enjoying time outdoors, Trivita's beetroot gummies keep you energized. Don't let fatigue hold you back. Experience the energy-boosting, on-the-go benefits of Trivita's beetroot gummies today. Embrace life's opportunities to move and thrive with Trivita's beetroot gummies.
Order today and use promo code BROWN25 to receive 25% off your order. As a new customer, 100% of the proceeds from your first order will go to support the Line of Fire radio broadcast. So call now, 1-800-771-5584, 1-800-771-5584, or online at Trivita.com.
Welcome back, friends, to the Line of Fire. I am going to begin to respond to some of the anti-Jewish lies that have been posted on Facebook. Christopher, American Jews have dual loyalty. In other words, you can't be a loyal American citizen and at the same time be loyal to Israel. Well, why not? Why not? And if, in fact, the interest of Israel were diametrically opposed to the interest of America, and vice versa, then it would be difficult. But when America is helped by Israel in the Middle East, that Israel being a democracy and Israel being the one bulwark against radical Islam in that part of the world, and a strong ally, and of course Israel needs American support, well, it's a mutual benefit. Why can't you love Israel and stand with America at the same time, especially if you believe that America helping Israel will bless America and that the alliance is mutually beneficial? Let's see. That the church has replaced Israel, that all prophecies concerning Israel have already been fulfilled. Replacement theology in church history quite blatantly was replacement, unashamedly so. There are some extraordinary quotes. I'm reading from one book that is an adamant replacement theology book. I mean, aggressive. Yes, we are replacement theology, and the church has always been replacement theology, and if you're not, you're a heretic. It's basically what the book says. I'm not going to quote the name of the book or the author, because if I do that, I want to do it in a way where I can give quotes and be as fair as I can. But I'm saying that the book is replacement theology on steroids, even with some Jew bashing in it as well. It's quite striking, proudly so. And if you don't hold to replacement theology, you're heretical. It's very blatant, saying that the church is now Israel, saying that the promises that were given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their descendants had now been transferred over to the church. Very blatant, very direct. You know what it means? It means God's a liar. If that's true, God's a liar. God can't be trusted. God can't be trusted to keep his promises. That's what it means. I'll be getting into this in depth with Steve Gregg, God willing, November 7th and 8th. If you're in the DFW area and you want to attend, just text the word Israel to 59090, 59090. Text the word Israel to 59090. If you're watching this before November 7th and 8th and you're in the DFW area, it is absolutely free. Offerings will be received for Jewish outreach projects because Steve and I want to stand together in that. And Steve has been as gracious and gentlemanly as you could imagine in setting this up. He pursued it, wanted to do it with me. We both want Jesus to be glorified. We both want the Word of God to shine forth. May His truth triumph. And we'll have some very, very strong differences in the midst of it. Hopefully we can model our differences in a Christ-like way as well. But if you can't be there, then by all means watch the live stream, November 7th and then 8th. So November 7th in the evening, morning and afternoon on the 8th. Watch the live stream on this very YouTube channel, The Line of Fire, or it'll be posted to watch afterwards. Again, if you're in the area, registration is free, but we'd like to get an idea of how many people are coming. So text the word Israel to 59090. All right. So we'll be getting into this much, much more. What about the view that, well, it says, in Joshua, it says that God kept all his promises and gave Israel the land. You have another statement, sometime after that, God kept all his promises, gave Israel the land. Yeah, but if he kicked Israel out and never brought them back and says it's not your land anymore, then he didn't keep his promises. Because it was to be an eternal inheritance, meaning as long as this earth exists. And in Psalm 105, read it through. You'll see beginning in verse 7 and 8, it talks about God's covenant and his promises. And there's no way you could make it more emphatic that it's forever, that it's for all generations. It's 1,000 generations. What? I've given you the land of Canaan. So that remains. Is it okay for the Jewish people to have a homeland? Is that all right? Do you know that when the state of Israel was founded in 1948, that the territory of the land of Israel was 1/1,000th of the surrounding Muslim countries? 1/1,000th in land. Many Americans say America's been a Christian nation. England was a Christian nation. We need this to be a more Christian nation again. And we have no problem with that. Muslim nations like Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan and so on, and so many Muslim nations, why can't there be a Jewish homeland? Other people can live there too, but why can't there be a Jewish homeland? All right, let's see here. That they are somehow entitled to the land while currently being in open rebellion to God. This was posted as a lie, but it's not entitled. It's God's grace. What does he say in Ezekiel 36? Why was he bringing Israel back to the land, Jewish people back to the land in the days of Ezekiel in the Babylonian captivity? Passages that still have not been fulfilled. When you read through Ezekiel 36, still hasn't been fulfilled. Only partially fulfilled back then, and ongoing fulfillment today. Was it because they were entitled? No, God said his name's being blasphemed. His name's being blasphemed. And because of that, he said, I'm bringing you back. And I'm going to bring you back in your unbelief, and there in the land I'll sprinkle clean water on you. So do we accept that God can be gracious or not? Do we accept that he can be merciful or not? That they are invaders, colonizers. Yes, that's the narrative of the hour with the whole Marxist, oppressed dichotomy. We have it throughout America, and this type of notion that gets taught in our schools, from children's schools, and of course starting in our schools of higher education, and that basically the most evil person by default in America is a white male, the ultimate colonizer, the epitome of the European white colonizer conqueror. Now, certainly there's been evil done by white people in world history, and there's been evil done by black people and people of all color. That's because human beings do evil things. But in point of fact, the ones with the most ancient claim to the land are who? The Jewish people, for whom Jerusalem has been the eternal capital. So there are definitely those Arabs who lived in Palestine, what Romans called Palestine beginning in the 2nd century after the destruction of Jerusalem and the Jewish War, 132 to 135 AD, the Bar Kokhba revolt, and the name was changed to Palestine. There have been Arabs who've lived in Palestine for centuries. Many, many moved into Palestine when Jews began increasing in number in the late 1800s, purchasing land and then developing it, and Arabs would then come to work the farms and help develop the land. So the numbers begin to really increase late 1800s into the 1900s for those reasons. But there are others that lived there a few generations. Others lived there many, many, many generations. In fact, there's some evidence that some of the Palestinians were originally Jews in Israel who submitted to Islam. They were forced to convert and converted, but preserved Jewish identity. It's actually a fascinating study among some of the Palestinians. So their origins go back that far, but the ones with the original claims, the Jewish people. And there was a Jewish presence there in the land over the centuries. And many of the Jews that founded the state of Israel in the first years were expelled from surrounding Middle Eastern countries. They lived in that region for centuries, even millennia. And then Jews coming from Europe, fleeing after the Holocaust year, they are part of that number as well. But they're coming simply to have a homeland, and one that was being established by other nations, where they would get a portion of the land. And remember, as I said, it was 1/1000th of the surrounding Islamic countries at that time. All right, let's see. Your replacement theology, of course. Christians must bless them to be righteous, or on the other hand, they hold no relevance to God anymore. Okay, I believe scripturally that God still blesses those who bless the Jewish people. It is a kindness, it is a grace, and one reason is that there is so much constant hatred towards the Jewish people and so much opposition and so much bloodshed that this is the least that Christians can do, to say our Savior's Jewish, our Bible's Jewish, salvation's of the Jews, John 4:22. Messiah's coming back to Jerusalem. We see the world opposition to Israel. We want to bless the Jewish people. God still does bless, and I believe he still judges those that treat them with disdain, that it was not just a promise given to Abraham and his offspring, but renewed in Isaac and Jacob, and then for all of Israel, Numbers 24. So this promise continues, and the Bible never says it goes away. But the idea that Israel's like some magic rock, and if you rub it, you get blessed. If you just do something nice for Israel, you get supernaturally blessed. That's obviously silly. But I see no scriptural reason to say that the principle of blessing and cursing, those who bless Israel will be blessed, those who curse or treat them with disdain will be cursed. I see no scriptural evidence that that has changed. I believe that remains until this day. Let's just look at a couple more here. Yeah, we talked about this. They own most of the world's music, entertainment, banking, social media, and porn industries. So here's what's interesting. God supernaturally gifted Israel in certain ways. Romans 11:29, the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable, speaking first and foremost about Israel and the Jewish people. And that can be for good or bad. For example, you can be genius level. You can have an amazing mind, and you could figure out a cure for cancer, or you could figure out a way to build terrorist bombs that have never been done before. You can be very strong physically. You can use that, to work the land and help the poor, or you can use it to beat people up. So there's no question that Jewish people have a disproportionate influence for either good or bad compared to our numbers. So when we get things right, you have an Isaiah the prophet, you have a Moses, you have an Apostle Paul, right? We get things wrong, you have Karl Marx, you have others. So the idea that Jews control the porn industry, where does it go back to? Well, a key figure, very immoral Jew that really pushed the sexual revolution in Germany. He's the founder. Well, hang on. Who are the fathers of porn in America? There are only two names that need to come to mind: Alfred Kinsey and Hugh Hefner. They were both raised in strict, quote, Christian homes. They both rebelled against their upbringings, and they're both Gentiles. They're both Gentiles. So just that one thing. But there's Howard Stern. Yeah, you've got profane shock jocks like that, and I'm sure you've had Jews involved in porn industry in America. But who are as America's the world's leader in manufacturing, exporting porn, shamefully. Who are the fathers of it? Alfred Kinsey and Hugh Hefner. Not Jews. And Jews control the media. Why do we get bashed all the time? Why is there constant day and night reporting genocide? Jews are guilty of genocide. Well, Mark Zuckerberg, yeah, you have some influential Jews, but hang on. Elon Musk, the world's wealthiest man, not a Jew. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, some of the wealthiest men in human history, not Jews. Yeah, but George Soros is a Jew, and he has all these liberal left-wing causes. Yeah, and others don't. And then you have Jews like Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro, famous for their conservative values and arguments and so on. And I'm just bursting these bubbles with a little bit of truth. We have Steven Spielberg. Yeah, and you have Francis Ford Coppola. There's so few Hollywood names I know, but plenty of them are not Jewish. The most influential actors, Tom Cruise. I thought he was Scientologist. You got to burst these things with a little fact. Well, it's Hollywood still secretly controlled by Jews. It is not publicly secretly. In other words, facts don't matter. Truth doesn't matter. All we're going to do is hold to conspiracies. May God help us. Replacement theology, of course, over and over. If you haven't read Our Hands Are Stained with Blood, I mentioned earlier, get the book. It'll open your eyes. It'll change your life. Make sure you get the 2019 edition. That everything going on in the Middle East is their fault all the time. Do you know that there were factions and war in the Middle East before and after the state of Israel? Before Israel, and I should say unrelated to Israel. The civil war in Syria, the civil war in Yemen, the fact that when Gaza was completely given over to the people, the Palestinians living there in 2005, that there was horrific bloodshed between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. Look it up. Look it up on 3 or 4 different AI bots and ask about Muslim violence, Arab violence, before the founding of the State of Israel, since the founding of the State of Israel. Find out about the bloodshed between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority and the atrocities committed in 2005, 6, 7. Just check it out. No, it's all Israel. There were problems there before Israel existed as a nation. There are problems unrelated to Israel that continue in the Arab Muslim world. Humans still fight with each other and do bad things. Take Israel out of the equation, it continues. They hate Jesus, but that's true. I grieve for them because, as Paul says, they are children of promise. The government is demonic, converses with Satan. If you say otherwise, you're woefully blind. I'm sure the people are great people and kind, but when it comes to Jesus, you're either with him or against him. Well, I appreciate loving them, grieving for them, get it. But there's so much error in the statement here. Your average Jew doesn't hate Jesus. Your average Jew doesn't think about Jesus. Do you, if you're a Christian, do you hate Buddha? What do you even know about Buddha? Just as an example. Your average Jew doesn't think about Jesus. And some Jews think he was some good guy or some prophet or a good ethical teacher. And religious Jews, the ones who would have the most hostile feelings towards him, it's based on church history. A lot of it's based on church history. Persecution of Jews in Jesus' name. You say, but I saw a video. I saw a video. And in this video, I saw these Christians, they're carrying a cross down the street as these Jews are walking towards them. They're carrying a cross, and these religious Jews, they spit on the ground. Yeah, because what do they know of they know of the cross? That means Holocaust to them. In their mind, the Holocaust took place in Christian Europe. And in their mind, the Nazis were Christians. And the state church sponsored this. That's how a Jewish person thinks. And the Crusaders, Christians. And the Inquisition, Christians. And Jews slaughtered in Jesus' name through history. That's what they know. That's what they know. One of my colleagues was doing outreach in California in a park for 12 years. Very few Jews stopped at his table to talk. He told me this today. When they put up an Israeli flag about 6 months ago, he said he has seen more Jews stop to talk to him in the last 6 months than in the previous 12 years. Not only so, he said this, that so many of them are Israeli and they want to hug them. They're crying. They feel so alone in the world. Christian love has opened them up to hear the gospel. I've heard so many stories from Israel directly. Christian love during this horrifically hard time since October 7th has softened their hearts to hear the rest of the message. Now, there are Jews who hate Jesus, of course. There were in his day. There are to this day. There are atheists who hate Jesus, but plenty of atheists don't think about Jesus, and so on and so forth. So it's an overstatement. It's a gross overstatement. And the government being demonic and conversing with Satan, you'd say that about the American government just as much in many ways through our history. You could come up with these exaggerated statements. And to say, if you say otherwise, you're willfully blind, sir, with all respect, you've believed a lot of propaganda. Live in Israel for a few years, all right? Get to know the people, the secular people, the religious people. Live there for a few years. And then if you still believe the same thing, fine. But, all right, maybe one or two more. Modern day Israel is a synagogue of Satan. When Jesus referred in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 to the synagogue of Satan, and we've done some short videos, some longer videos on this, he was not saying all Jews worldwide or the synagogue of Satan. First, it's possible he was talking to people who weren't Jews at all, talking about people who opposed the gospel and claimed to be Jews and weren't. Just like in Revelation 2, the church of Ephesus tested those who claimed to be apostles and weren't. Could be some Gentile faction claiming to be Jews and they weren't, and they're opposing the gospel. The other way of reading it is there were Jews who were opposing the gospel. We know that happened in different cities. We know that for a fact from ancient history. And those that act like that, they're not acting like real Jews. They're acting like the synagogue of Satan. That's all he's saying. He's not saying any Jew on the planet today is the synagogue of Satan. Let's just see here. Went through Khazars, went through today's Jews. They're not really Jews. Jews are friends of Christians. Well, many are. Many are. Many Jews work side by side with Christians for common good, for common purposes. I have colleagues who are Orthodox Jews. We work together, fighting anti-Semitism. In some cases, with Jonathan Feldstein, we've written articles together. We debate who Jesus is all day, but he respects my faith. I respect his in the midst of our differences. We each believe the other's wrong, but we stand together for common purposes. Jews and Christians work together for many common purposes. And many Christians are true friends of Israel, and there are Israelis who are true friends of true Christians. I know many of them. Yeah, that's true. As for the Talmud, all right, tell you what, how about a little project? You ready for it? Okay. Go to sfaria.org. And I'm going to end here. There's more stuff we'll get to other times, God willing. A little exercise. You ready? Go to sfaria.org. S-E-F-A-R-I-A. Sfaria. S-E-F-A-R-I-A. Sfaria.org. Then, here's what you're going to do. I'm going to do it in real time here. So you click on Sfaria, and then you'll see Browse the Library. You can download thousands of Jewish books in Hebrew, Aramaic, many with English translation for free. It's amazing. You see Browse the Library. Got that? And you'll see Tanakh, Mishnah, Talmud. So click on Talmud, all right? And what's the very first thing that's going to come up? Brachot, which is literally blessings. So it's blessings in prayer, and it's part of a section called Zraim, which is seeds dealing with agriculture. But it begins with prayer and blessing because you can't have healthy land producing crops and things without God's blessing. So it starts with blessing and prayer. So you're going to click on Brachot, okay? And it's going to give you a little background. Brachot is the first tractate of Zraim, seeds, the first order of the Mishnah, the only tractate. Okay. And then let's just go for it. And you're going to click on, let's read it. Let's read it. How about that? And you click on page 2A is where it starts. You say, what happened to 1? There is no page 1. Talmud starts, every edition of the Talmud, each tractate, each book starts on page 2 because you're coming into an ongoing discussion. And you'll have there not just the Hebrew and Aramaic, but the Steinsaltz translation, which expands things. So you have the real word for word in bold and the rest of it in regular print, and that's the expanded translation explaining it. Then just start reading. Just start reading the Talmud for yourself. Try it out. See how many pages You get through. Or maybe, tell you what, you think, I'm really interested, like the Sabbath stuff. Okay, so Talmud, and you scroll down and you see, okay, here's Seder Moed, that's the next one, that's Holy Days, and click on Shabbat and start reading. Start reading on Shabbat. The acts of carrying out from a public domain into a private domain or vice versa, which are prohibited on Shabbat, are primarily two basic actions that comprise four cases from the perspective of a person inside a private domain, and two basic actions that comprise four cases from the perspective of a person outside in a public domain. You will study for hours, for days, for weeks, for months. Won't find anything about Jesus. Find a lot of very difficult legal discussion. Find some interesting stories. Find some interesting biblical interpretation. And then here and there, you find a statement. I mean, if you study for years, maybe every year or two, you'll find a line, a statement that's very derogatory, apparently about Jesus, some debate about this, talking about Jesus or not. You'll find that. But hey, in the New Testament, you find very derogatory statements about the Jewish religious leaders, many of whom were hypocrites that Jesus rebuked. And if I ask you your opinion of Muhammad, if I said, do you think Muhammad is in hell now? You'd say, yeah, of course, he was a false prophet. Well, a religious Jew that believes Jesus was a false prophet, they think he's in hell. Why would that shock us that that's believed? Just like you believe that many of the scribes and Pharisees were hypocrites and hell-bound themselves. And a religious Jew would read it and say that some of those are my heroes. They weren't hypocrites at all. So it's only natural you're going to have these different sentiments expressed. But read it for yourself. Well, I saw these quotes. Forget the quote. You can pull stuff out of context with different meaning. You can wrench things in ways that are almost unimaginable when it comes to the Talmud. You can do it with the Bible, all the more with the Talmud. So here's the deal. Read it for yourself, and you'll find out what traditional Jews study on a daily basis. And I think you'll be a little bit surprised. And then when you read the ethical stuff, it's like, wow, I agree with that. Or those are good ethics. Or those are good principles. Well, that's a beautiful story. In the midst of things that you don't understand at all, that are complex or dull or legal, and certain things you're going to differ with. But read it for yourself. All right, friends, with that, we are done. May the smile and grace of the Lord be on you.